This episode of Everything is Awesome is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is the #1 tool for all podcasters. You can record high-fidelity audio between remote locations and get studio-quality sound. Go to Zencastr.com and use coupon code THATENTERTAINS for 20% off for 3 months or 20% off an annual plan.
Everything is Awesome is part of Courts and Parts, a podcast network featuring pop culture, TV, movie, and geek podcasts. Check out some of our other shows, like TV Ate My Brain, Let's Chat with Revelin Friends, and Podstalgic at courtsandparts.com.
Awesome. Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome. 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 That was awesome. You guys are awesome. No. You're awesome. You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I am your host, Kev, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. So I'm going to have to apologize around the whole episode here. I can't find my headphones. My laptop battery is dead, so I wasn't able to hook up the blue mic, the blue snowball, to record this pre-intro, so I'm doing it on my phone without headphones. Hopefully it sounds okay. Also, this episode, I'm really excited that I got to finally sit down and talk to our guest, who we'll get to in just a second here. However, there were connection issues on. I'm not sure whose side it was. Probably mine, because I was on a hotspot and not a Wi-Fi system. I'm not 100% sure where the issue was. We got about halfway through, maybe a little bit more through our conversation, and we really started having trouble keeping the connection going. So I think we have enough of an episode to put out here to you, but we will have this guest back on, and we'll get to that guest in just a second here. I do want to remind everyone that your support means the world to this show, to Everything is Awesome. You can support this show in one of many different ways. You can support us on patreon.com/thatentertains. That not just supports the show, but it also supports the entire That's Entertainment podcast network. And we're in the process of rebooting that. I've been in Patreon mode. I've been helping revamp the Once Upon a Wine Patreon, and it gave me a lot of great ideas for what I want to do for the That's Entertainment one. And so if you go to thatentertains.com/Patreon, probably at this point it's not 100% there, but it's right, like probably a week or two after Valentine's Day, we will have a complete rebooted That's Entertainment Patreon page. Patreon is a way that you can monetarily support us. By basically getting a subscription, you're guaranteed to get things from the That's Entertainment Podcast Network and Everything is Awesome early. You're guaranteed to get some exclusive stuff. If we hit our goals, we're going to start producing more content. I'm really excited for what Patreon could do for us. I've seen what it has done for other creators, and I really would love to be able to devote more time to podcasting and to other things. Like, I have a passion for video work, and I would love to get into writing and directing more short videos, web series, new media stuff, maybe even a feature down the road. But so that's how you can help us, support us monetarily. If not, completely understand. That's not the only way you can support us. You can go to iTunes and review this podcast, rate and review it 5 stars. The more ratings we have and the higher ratings we have, Apple Math figures out how to get us in front of more people so that more people are listening to the show, and in turn that means we're possibly doing more advertising and stuff like that, or I would like to avoid advertising, and that's part of what Patreon's all about. But regardless, you can do that, or you know what, simply word of mouth recommendations. When you're in a car with a friend, say, hey, I listened to this really good podcast where this guy sits around and just talks kind of pop culture and talks about that person, his guests that week's like involvement in pop culture. It's kind of like a less cool version of Talk is Jericho or the Stone Cold Show or WTF with Mark Marrow, or any, it's indie, man. It's indie talk, indie talk. Anyway, there are the ways that you can help support this show. Without further ado, this week's guest, I'm really excited that we got to sit down and talk. He was a member of the Dark Knights of the Round Table a few months ago. He is part of the Take-Two empire. We've already talked to Brian on our crossover episode, Crisis on Earth X. And we finally got to sit down and chat with Craig from Take-Two. And we're definitely going to have him on the show again. And I still have like a lot of cool ideas that we want to do with Take-Two, work along with them on this show and whatnot. So I think you're going to hear more of Craig down the road and Brian down the road and who knows who else. So without further ado, let's start to Kev and Craig from a few days ago trying to do a podcast on their hotspot. Day, and that's I'm on my hotspot because I am not at work right now. I decided I got flyers for our live show this weekend, and I could not find parking in the city to like go give them to places. So I was like, fuck this. Right. I'll just come back tomorrow. I'll take the day off. I should have done this. I should have planned this out. So I'm actually in my buddy has to record a line for our intro. So I'm in his parking lot connected to my hotspot.
Nice. I am right and directly in front of a Starbucks in a parking lot as well.
Nice. And so the only thing that I started listening to the episode I did on Wi-Fi the other day, and to edit it up, and there is some audio drift that's like not just an easy, let me shift my guest track over like a second.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it's not quite as bad as the round table. So,
okay, it's not going to be a 4 or 5 day process.
No, it should only. I actually have to go back and I only started editing it to see what it was like, and then I decided to work on stuff for the live show this weekend. But
probably a good call.
So, yeah. I was so last minute for the live show this year for the whole festival, because like it's not often that I like get into a fog of depression, but for whatever reason, I know what the reason is. For the first 2 weeks of January, I was just like, I don't want to podcast. Fuck podcasting.
You're right. Yeah. No, I totally understand. Yeah.
So, but then the 0 hour, I was like, oh, you know what? I have a festival I'm running. Other shows depend on me. I need to get going.
That's probably true. Yeah. That's a good call. When it's just you doing your own podcast, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, and there was a piece of me, a part of me, I mean, that at some point I was like, I wonder if like, because like I'm not getting responses from certain people about certain things. And that was like part of the reason why I got into a little bit of like a depressed state in the beginning of the month, because I just wasn't getting a response from my normal sound guy. I wasn't getting, and like, I know like he's traveling, so like I get it. And
right.
I wasn't getting a response from one of the major vendors or sponsors, vendors, we'll say, from for the show. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, like I need you of all people to respond, because like
right.
You're an important part of the show. And then I added a 6th show to this year's show, and I wanted to bring out, I don't know, have you heard of We Got This with Mark and Hal?
It sounds familiar. I think I've seen it on Twitter. I mean, I haven't listened, but
yeah. It's Hal Lublin. He's a comedian that is out in LA, and he's originally from the Bucks County area. I got hooked up with him, Bucks County being where I live. And I got hooked up with him through the Philadelphia Podcast Festival over the last summer, because he wanted to do as much press as possible, since he was like the hometown boy coming back to be part of the festival. And I wanted to bring him and his co-host out, which his co-host is in New York, so not as
Right.
big of a deal to be like the headlining show. But it boiled down to like, if I wanted to do something like that, it means that we need to somehow make at least like $2,000
Yeah.
before we can even donate money to Fuck Cancer. And I was like, well, if that's what I'm like, that's not what I want to do. Like, if I don't mind paying to bring someone out, but like, if like last year, I know what we raised. I was like, that's not going to cover anything. So
yeah. You don't want, I mean, you put out some money of your own pocket, but you don't want to, put out a couple $1,000.
Yeah, exactly. And like, and the nice thing that, I don't know, like, so you guys do live shows too, right?
Yeah. We've done a few. I mean, no festivals like you. We're not high class like you. But...
Well, and I'm dropping my mouse all over the place if people could hear that over the mic. I'm sitting, much like I imagine you are, Craig, is I'm sitting in, what's now, I finally got my car back. I'm in my Hyundai Tucson, which is not, no matter how far I put the seat back, it's still not really a good setup for podcasting in a car.
No, I mean, there are very few are. I'm currently in my original first generation Scion XB. So a nice little toaster box, which same thing. Not very good podcasting studio conditions.
No, but I got to tell you, and I don't know how I feel about using a personal hotspot, especially like in the area that I'm in right now, and that where I would normally use it. It's just like crappy self-service.
Yeah,
but the Wi-Fi, like seemed to work pretty well, and I really like this option that I now have opened up. Like a 3 to 4 hour window that I can say, hey, I can do an interview during this time as long as you use Zencastr.
Yeah, I mean, and it helps a lot too if you're doing anything on the West Coast, or in any sort of different time zone. I mean, because being on the East Coast like you are, half the time if somebody wants to do something on the West Coast, they're like, all right, well, let's do it 7 o'clock, and you're like, well, that's 10 o'clock p.m. my time, like, or they want to do it in the morning. You're like, well, that's the middle of the day now for me.
Yeah, and I'm very lucky that my job, like I have supervisors, but like I kind of am in my own little area, and I'm in a cubicle, so I can't just whip out the mic and start podcasting in the middle of the office.
Sure, you can.
It's
fine. No one will notice.
But I can just take lunch pretty much whenever I want. So that's so it's opened up a nice little window. But anyway, so for your live shows, what do you guys like? What, let's say, is there a cost to anything you guys do? Marketing for marketing to set up?
Yeah, there hasn't been much. I mean, we do. Last summer we did Brews and Beats with Hard Rock. So every Wednesday we would be there, and they didn't charge us anything. All they did basically was reserve the table for us. So we would just get there, we'd have our table. We still had to pay for our own food and pay for our own beers. But a lot of times it was a different local brewery and a different local band there. So we try to interview them both and stuff like that. And if we got along with the brewery, sometimes the brewery would cover some of the bill. But most of the time it was just, out of our own pocket. And since it was pretty much every Wednesday evening, we were usually eating dinner while we were there too.
Yeah.
So that's $50-$60 we were spending each week to do it. So, like they didn't charge us for it, but we ended up paying money every time. Plus it was $15 a park, just right in the middle of Baltimore, Inner Harbor where it was. So that alone, that's $15 minimum we're spending every time. But this summer, I think they're doing it on Thursdays. And now that if it's a lot of the same breweries, we've gotten to know them. We've kept in contact with them over the years. So, we're sort of hoping we can kind of keep that going and, not have to pay every time, at least.
So the way we do it, or at least I do it, and really, and I don't know how it is in the Baltimore, DC, Virginia area. I don't really, I feel like that's like the general area. I know where you guys are from. I haven't really pinpointed the exact area, but in Philly, which is where I do all my live shows, I'm trying to do them in Bucks County, where I'm from, because it would be less travel. And like you, like for me, there's a minimum cost before I even start looking at any other costs, is either taking a train or parking. And it's about the same cost. Like it's going to either be $20 to park, or it's going to be about $20 to $25 round trip for a train ticket. So it's like, okay, that's my minimum cost. But then because I don't do, like, I'm very lucky that Philadelphia is, most of the venues I contact are much like hard rock for you guys, where they don't charge me anything. Like, and that's a huge
that's
savings.
huge. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because I don't know what your guys' mindsets are when you go into a live show, and or if you've ever contemplated doing a live show outside of that venue. But like, I still have a hard time with podcasts that charge money to come watch them perform. And I get it. Like, I know it's one thing when like the Kevin Smiths of the world
Oh
do it,
yeah,
because that's how they
if
earn
a
a
Kevin
living.
Smith or an Adam Carolla do it, yes, obviously that makes
Yeah.
sense. You know, you're getting 1 million downloads or so an episode. Like, you know, they have
Yes.
premium
Yes.
content people willingly pay for and get. But for, you know,
Mhm.
I think you're in the same boat. It's pretty much what you know, we as Take Two can offer somebody is, we'll promote your location, and we'll promote that we're
Yeah.
going to be there. So we will bring, you know, people in there who will then buy whatever it is you're selling. Like when we did our 1 year anniversary at Jailbreak, like we will bring people that will buy beer and that will buy from the food trucks. But, you know, there's not much that we as a company can give you aside from promotion and people.
Yeah. And so that's like where, like, instantly when I was going to decide if it was Bucks County or the city, like Bucks County, I'm trying to find a venue, and I think I found one that will, won't charge me any kind of fee to rent the venue, that's the first thing. And so, but like for the other, like, I say for my festivals where I'm very lucky, like this festival, which is I run completely on my own, I am very lucky that almost everything I get covered through sponsorships, save for like my parking and anything like extra, which I haven't really, like stickers or promotion, like wristbands, buttons, all that kind of little like goofy crap that you can give away.
Right.
I haven't really even like asked if anyone would sponsor to just have that stuff made. But like my marketing materials, my sound guy, my venue, my food and beer for just me and my sound guy, I get covered all through sponsorships.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So like literally for this show, the only cost I have is parking and a few miscellaneous supplies. Normal live shows where it's just me and one other show, I feel that it's unfair to like say, hey, sponsor me again, because I'm going to be doing this every other month.
Mm-hmm.
So I pay my printer for those shows, which is usually a minimum of about $75 for the order that I get, which is actually like a super good deal if anyone, because they ship to you. I highly suggest Fireball Printing for your printing needs. They are amazing high quality stuff at a like really good price.
Right.
But anyway, so like I pay for that for my non-festival shows. I pay I don't bring a sound guy out. I bring my own equipment out, so it's still not a cost to me. But like there's a cost behind these live shows, and I still don't charge for them. Like podcasting is supposed to be free, and like I see, and did you go to the DC podcast festival?
No, we did not. We were trying to get in with them a couple times, but we ended up not being able to go just based on the weekend it was. So we're not even sure how it was really set up, or like, because theirs was a lot of, they didn't charge podcasts to come in, but you know, there was different fees and stuff associated with it from what we were seeing. But I don't think they were charging, I don't think they had tickets for sale. So I don't know if they were making money off people. Like,
I think they did. I looked at it in 2016 because I had applied for the Philadelphia Podcast Festival, and little old me, when I got accepted, I was like, oh man, like this is amazing. My first live show in like 10 years. And like, I can't believe like my show is nothing. I can't believe they like said yes. Then I came to realize like, there's really nothing against the people running the Philadelphia Podcast Festival, but they don't like really say no to anybody. Yeah. Like we had the 5th annual, which was last year, there was over 60 shows. And out of those, let's say 65 shows, only 5 or 6 of them were brought in talent from outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
Everyone else was local. I would imagine that it's going to come to a point where they have to say, okay, well, we can't accept some people because we're the way they run it is it usually is 2 weekends over the summer. And I would imagine they're just going to, like, you run out of time and available space to put these people in. So, but it is, I think, and I could be wrong, but it is the biggest podcast festival in the country from what I can tell. So I like to take pride that I'm from this area for that reason alone.
No, definitely. I mean, we're trying. We like the idea of eventually having our own sort of festival and that's one of the problems. And I think you the same thing, being from working in the large area like Philadelphia. I mean, in DC area, like there are so many other podcasts around here covering so many things. You got all the politics. You got I mean, DC itself is a large radio market, so a lot of the guys who did talk radio here, then turned off into podcasts, but they're still in the same area. Like, there's a lot of different shows here that we would love to try and do a festival and get all of them involved, but that's not easy work.
No, and I mean, I like this. I mean, by the time this recording comes out, it might have already passed. But the festival that I'm putting together this weekend is a 1-day festival that's consisting of 6 shows. That even when last year, I feel like I was, despite starting everything super late to book, I felt like I was more prepared than I am this year. But both scenarios where I'm prepared and not prepared, it is one of the most stressful things to do for a 1-day festival with 6 shows, one of them being my own. So it is super stressful. I couldn't imagine putting on something larger. And I mean, each year, that's my goal, is to kind of grow my January festival into something that is how I would run a more generic like this festival has, it celebrates my podcast anniversary and also is trying to raise money for F Cancer, but I want to grow it into something that's like what the Philadelphia Podcast Festival is if it was run by me.
Right.
Yeah, because so this is the 6th year, which means 7 years ago I was sitting down doing a podcast with a friend. I was contracted to be a co-host on that show. And I said, and it was right like the first year or second year of VidCon, it's called, out in LA. And I was like, hey man, like, this is crazy, but why don't we do PodCon? And it was something we were working on. And then the next summer, the people that run Philadelphia Podcast Festival, they launched the Philadelphia Podcast Festival.
See, they were obviously listening and they stole your idea.
Yeah,
obviously.
Well, yeah, I don't know. They had our studio bugs, but they're really, like, I love the people that run it. Like, I am hoping to get more and more involved each year with it because it's something that I really like. There's things that I would obviously do differently, and that's not a knock on what they do. It's just like 2 different mindsets. But I really like they have a mindset of, it seems like podcasts /podcast listener first, where they only charged for the shows that they brought out because they had to cover personal costs.
Okay.
And I can respect that. And, they had to pay for, either that or the money comes out of their own pocket to bring these guys out. So I can respect that. And whatnot. I probably would have went another direction, but that's just me. But yeah, so it's I don't know. Oh, the DC Podcast Fest is how all that happened. I applied for that one back in 2016, and I was a little weary of it to begin with because they were charging the listeners to come out and to like the Wonder Bread Factory or wherever they hold it at.
Yeah, and that's hard because I mean, we want as many listeners as possible. The idea of now come to listen to us, but you got to pay for it. Like, we don't want to have anybody get turned off by that and not want to come out and hear it. Yeah.
And so that, like, I have, and obviously like the LA festival and the New York festival and the Chicago festival, even, like, it's different because they're bringing out literally professional comedians who, like, all they do and I'm not saying like all they do, like I know they're very busy people, but like they don't have regular 9 to 5 jobs, or whatever that you want to define a 9 to 5 job as, whether it's overnight or not, like you and I
Right,
do.
right.
Like, spoiler alert to people who are listening to this, we make, and I assume this is the same for you with Take Two, like there's no money made. Like I have a real job.
No, not at all. We sell t-shirts and stuff and like stickers. Like we've made a little bit of money off of that, and then we have an Amazon link on our website. We make like, a small percentage off of, but there is no means like we're not paying any bills with anything we're making. Like
Exactly. Yeah. Like I still, after 10 and a half years of doing this, I still have yet to get hosting fees covered.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's always been a passion project and just something I love doing. But like the podcasts that go out to those 3 festivals specifically are, I don't want to say the professional podcasts, but for the most part, they're kind of like professional podcasts. Like they make at least some money on their podcast, plus they're not like they're working nights at a comedy club, or they're working comedians. Yeah. So it's, I get the festivals that charge for that kind of stuff, because it's a little bit more in line with like a normal convention that you would go to. And maybe I'm sour about festivals that charge because I'm just jealous.
That's very true.
Where I'm at in the podcast.
I mean, I'm not saying that if the option came up and we could charge people to come listen to us podcast, we wouldn't do that. We just know no one's going to pay that. Mm-hmm. Like, let's be honest. We haven't even hit year 2 yet for us on Take Two, so we're not charging anybody for a while.
And it's, I mean, and I'm about to hit 2 years with Everything Is Awesome. I'm a little under 10 and a half years. I'm a little under 10 and a half years of podcasting in general. And like, it took doing this show to realize, well, I'm not going to make money off of this. So let's stop treating it like a business, which in turn like led to really cool opportunities where I need to start thinking about it as a business again, but not in a way where I'm like, oh, I'm going to get rich off this. I'm going to get that podcast money.
Yeah, exactly. There, you start to realize that idea of podcast money isn't a thing.
Yeah. So I do want to find out, and because I don't think we really touched on this when you were on the round table, but so how did you personally, not necessarily everyone involved with Take Two, how'd you get involved with podcasting? Like, what's the origin point that made you say, yeah, podcasting, I'm gonna get rich off this?
Well, there was always that initial thought of getting rich off it, and then very quickly, I think, as we said, you realize that's not happening. I was always into podcasts. I was listening to podcasts, years ago, back when you started, basically, there was no podcast app or anything. It was downloaded to my computer, take it from my computer, and then move it over to my iPod. Like that's how I had to do it. So I was listening to it then.
The dark years, as you will.
Right, the dark years of podcasting. So there was a lot of that, and a lot of what the podcasts I listened to were actually just radio shows that were just on at times I couldn't, like they were on in the morning and I wasn't up then because I was working the evening shift. So I'd wake up, the show's over, I'd download to my computer, download to my iPod, and that's what I would listen to all night. Then, because Take Two started with our hosts Brian and Nick. They started it, and then basically they did like 1 or 2 episodes and realized, well, we should have a couple of guest hosts come on every once in a while. So a lot of us started to show up, me being one of the guest hosts, and then I just never let them let me go, pretty much, and just kept coming on as much as possible. And then, taking that, and then I was like, and everything that we've, every spin-off of anything we've done since then has basically been, like, once you realize how, I don't know if easy is the right word, but that podcasting is not sort of as complicated as a process as you think. Like, once you get over the whole putting something onto iTunes and you realize, well, I just got to plug in a mic and hit record and I can talk about anything. Like, so then it turned into, well, I love wrestling. Let's do a wrestling one. Me and Tony love soundtracks. Let's do a one completely about soundtracks. Like, it's basically just ideas after ideas after ideas. And, then we turn into where we burn ourselves out, I'm sure, at some point, because we're podcasting 5 out of 7 days.
Yeah. And that's what happened to me early on my very first show was only lasted about 3 months or so, or maybe 4 months, and there was a falling out between me and the producer, and so I quickly, and at that point I literally all I did was show up and talk, and this was like, we're talking 10 years ago, so I was in my early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I had the reason I started podcasting is because I got injured from drinking, but I stopped wrestling at that point because I had broken my ankle. So like, and I was in this persona of like my wrestling persona. So I thought I was bigger than I was.
Gotcha.
And,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when the split happened, it was like, all right, well, I still want to do this, but now I have to figure it out on my own. And it did really become like, and I want to say, it is an easy thing to do. Anyone can do it. And much like Kevin Smith says, I think everyone should do one, but there is a downside to podcasting, and it's usually money and, the cost of money.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
To run this thing. And there's all these little things that are here and there, but like when I first started and I started doing it on my own, I saw how easy it was. And I say this, again, 10 years ago, podcasting was like more than just plugging a microphone into your computer.
Oh, it's significantly harder then. Yeah. I mean, it's literally USB plugging a microphone in now to a laptop, and you start recording and you're good to go. Like,
yeah. 10 years ago, and still I still hold on to it because maybe I'm just too stubborn to learn better ways to do it. But like, when I have my studio finished, I know what my setup's going to be with my mixer, and it's going to involve at least 2 or 3 computers and
yep.
All this complicated stuff that I'm sure I could probably, reduce down if I was more willing to listen to what these kids today do for podcasting.
These young whippersnappers.
Yeah. That grew up in the golden age of podcasting. But yeah, so it was still like, I found out like how, once I had the setup, I found out how easy it was. And like when me and my co-host had to both go on vacation around the same time, at the time we were running shows where it was like 4 or 5 people as co-hosts. So the other guys like did a little spin-off show called I forget what they called it. And ultimately they went out on their own, and it was called The Generic Show. But like initially they were part of us, and we were posting 2 shows a week. And I was like, oh man, like how cool would it be to have, and like at the time there was no such thing as a podcast network.
Right.
But right. I was like, how cool would it be to like have like, there's networks for television. Why not a network for podcasting? So yet again,
you were ahead of your time with everything here, Kev.
I was. I feel like the grumpy old person that's like, well, I had this great idea,
right, and
then someone else beat me to it. But yeah, so it was like very early on. I was like, okay. Once that show kind of ended and whatnot, and I started doing things again more on my own, it was like me podcasting 4 or 5 days a week, and you do get burned out. Like that's the fear that I have for you guys, is that you're going to get yourselves burned out.
Yeah. And that was our initial plan with we originally have the 7 hosts, was so that none of us got burned out. We would just sort of, slowly, some would take a week off, others would take a week off. Like we would sort of trade off back and forth. But then once we started to do all these spin-offs and stuff, it's a lot. And I think luckily we're all still in that, yes, let's do it, we love it mode, but I think we all came to a realization right around Christmas time, because other shows we listen to and other podcasts, we're friends with, they're like, oh, well, we took off like the month of December. And like, that didn't even occur to us. Like, oh, you mean just not put anything out? Like, so we were, we were like, no, we have to get it out every week, we can't stop. Yeah. And, so it started to be like, well, maybe, it helps to take like a break for a week or 2. Yeah. Like, it's not the end of the world if you don't put an episode out, but we, especially first starting out, that first year, you don't ever want to leave somebody hanging. You actually have a listener that's expecting an episode every week. You want it to be there, like no matter what. So that's the mindset we were in.
And there is so much truth to that because of me doing it for so long, that I'm more ignorant to it than anything else, I guess. Like, I just kind of say, well, whatever, like my audience is my audience and they'll follow me. Like, I would say my first year of this show, I was pretty good about posting one every week. But what it turns out to be is like, I know that there's, and I'm going to try to do better this year, but I know that the end of the year is a tough time for me. And I just don't want to do podcasting. And so I need to, if anything, and one of the things, I don't know what you guys do, if anything, for your anniversaries, but like something I did last year for the first anniversary was like, all right, I want to every year, like, just change it up. Like, even if it's something so small that no one even notices but me, that I want to change it up, just A, to keep it interesting, but B, just to kind of keep on evolving. And like the first year it was no more 2-parters. Like it's unless it makes sense story wise, like it's going to be, if I do a 2-hour show, I'll post a 2-hour show. I won't split it up into 2 55-minute episodes or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then this year, as you've been part of the roundtable, which was part of that second year worth of shows, where I was still saying, with my guests on the air, welcome to this week's edition of the show, blah, 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 and whatnot. And where I would go into a very Kevin Smith-esque type of start and stop to my interview show. Now I'm going into year 3, I'm doing what pretty much I think every interview show does, and that's I record the interview and then I'll in post record the intro and the outro.
Yeah, I mean, and that works better because then you can explain, things that came up. You can sort of tease at the beginning of an intro. Like, it definitely can work that way.
Exactly, and it's also like I feel like, all right, now I can try to, in a week or two, record enough content for a month or so, and then one day I just need to spend one day for an hour and a half recording intros and outros, and so we'll see. I'm hoping that my hope is that when I hit a little bit of a fog, or when I hit the end of the year where I know that I just hate the world and I hate life, that I can have like either them prepared to go, or all I literally have to do for November and December is to sit down and say, hey, welcome to the show. This is my guest. Give me reviews and money at patreon.com.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Here's the interview. And so we'll see how that turns out. It's just ever evolving for me.
Yeah. I mean, and that was what we started to realize when we started a lot of these spin-offs, because I mean, I love doing our weekly Take Two. I mean, it's obviously what got us into this. It's what we love, but it's based on movies, reviews, box office, and like weekly Hollywood news. So we can't early record the show. Like, we can't talk about this weekend's box office on a Friday and talk about what happened. We need to record it Sunday night or Monday, usually Monday, to discuss what happened over the past weekend. So we realized when we did this, we were like, we all love doing it, but we've caught ourselves into this trap where we can't pre-record really anything. So that's why we came up with ideas like the soundtracks show or the spotlight show that Brian and Tony do, where they focus on one actor. Like, we can do this, months ahead of time or at the beginning of the month and work on editing it and slowly putting it together and put it out 2, 3, 4 weeks later, just because there is no date to that. There's no finite point.
Now, when you do one of your monthly, you do those ones monthly, or there's really no?
Yeah, I mean, soundtracks and spotlight, we do both monthly. We try to have, like, this weekend or this month for spotlight, they focused on Tom Hanks. So me and Tony tonight are actually recording the Forrest Gump soundtracks episode. So we're just going to talk about Forrest Gump. So we try and have them sort of blend together. But yeah, so that way, I don't know when they recorded the Tom Hanks one. They put it out 2 weeks ago, but they could have recorded it in December for all I know. Like, it's not like there's a point that you have to record it at. You can record it whenever.
Now, do those, like the Take Two wrestling, Take Two spotlight and soundtracks and whatnot, do they replace the your normal Take Two podcast?
No, that's the thing. Yeah, we just release them later on in the week. Like, we'll always do Take Two. Okay. We release that weekly show on Tuesday mornings or late Monday night, Tuesday morning, and these other shows are just added in later on the feed. Wrestling's usually around Thursday because we'll watch Raw and SmackDown Monday and Tuesday and record Wednesday. So wrestling's usually out on Thursday. But
So
yeah, the rest of them we usually just try and put out on weekends, or we basically try and make sure we're not putting out 2 episodes a day is pretty much our biggest goal now.
yeah. And there's two things I want to touch on. The first, because I think it's quicker, is I love the the comment we had in DMs now makes a lot more sense, where you're not used to having to record ahead of time. So when you and I are talking about doing another podcast about psych, and I said, yeah, we can just like pre-record like 2 or 3 at a time. And you're like, oh yeah, shit, I never thought about pre-recording.
I didn't think we can watch these episodes. We can record like the first 5 and be like, oh, just put them out like every other week. And you've got like a month and a half already done. I'm like, oh, and you would just be like always ahead of time. Like that makes sense. Like never even occurred to me, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it is. And when I'm a part of another show outside of Everything Is Awesome, I try to make sure that it is a bi-weekly show or something like that. Unless it's one that all I'm doing is editing it and posting it. Like, I don't care if that's weekly, but like for like Once Upon a Wine, and The Ladies Who Rant are 2 podcasts that I produce, and they're part of the network, That's Entertainment Network. And, they're weekly shows that I just edit and put up, but like, I'm a co-host on Bullies Keep Out. I have to redo some stuff for the Zomcast to clear legal, as they say, and then everything that we've recorded has been cleared to be posted again. But that's it's gonna be a bi-weekly show, like BKO, and then
right. Mm-hmm.
I'm doing a thing, or not me. I got Batman to do a show called Batman on Fat Man.
Very nice,
and that's gonna be twice a month, not necessarily bi-weekly, but twice a month. So like anything that I'm involved with is, unless it's Everything Is Awesome, is a bi-weekly thing. Cause I've done the whole, let's do 6 weekly shows and then I want to kill myself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's no matter what topics you do them on, even if it's 6 completely different topics, you're just going to get tired of talking at a certain point. Like,
yeah. Well, and that's hard for me because I love to talk, but yeah, it's like at some point it's not even necessarily, the thing I love recording a podcast. Like I could do this every single day. It's the other things that come along with it. And this is where like people who I say, like in the back of my mind, when I say you do a podcast, you're going to love it. It's great. In the back of my mind, I'm like, but you're going to hate everything else after you're done hitting record. Like,
right. The actual recording, if this could be my job, even if just podcasting is all I could do, even the other stuff wouldn't matter. Like the editing and the posting and all, like that wouldn't matter. It's the fact that, we can carve out an hour, 2, 3 hours to record, but then it's the other amount of time that I got to finding time to edit, finding time to put it all together, finding time to post stuff. Like that's where you run into problems, I think. And that's when I think most podcasts probably end up fizzling out. The recording's the fun part. Well, it's all the other stuff that's the work.
Well, that's why like podcasts that don't make it, they usually don't last more than 10 weeks because it is. Now, I'm lucky in the sense that like when I really like kind of honed my skills as both a personality and a producer, I was doing things on stickcam.com, which was like the YouTube of live streaming back in the day.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And at that point, like, why edit anything that I'm saying because it's already been aired live?
Yeah. Oh, that's so
I don't. No need to cut out the uhs and the ums, and so I retained that kind of mentality. Is that I'm not going to go through and cut anything out. Honestly, like normally a show that I record, like right now, if there's something that's said that you're like, hey, can you cut that out? Or there's something that I say that I'm like, oh, I need to cut that out. I'll go and cut it out. I listen to it to make sure there's no audio drift. That tends to be my enemy now, is that sometimes the audio drift will take with the Dark Knights of the Round Table podcast that you were part of. That took me like a week, I think, to go through, or maybe 2 weeks. I forget how long it took me. It took me a very long time. But other than that, like my intros and my outros, if I pre-record that's what takes me like, all right, well, I did 3 takes of this intro because I'm an asshole, and now I have to edit this intro so that I sound intelligent, even though I'm going to sound like an idiot in the actual interview.
Yeah, and I mean, we're still editing out a lot with the main 2 editors from Take Two are usually me and Brian. Like we're the main ones that do it, and we still edit out a lot of the uhs and the ahs and the long pauses and stuff like that. But if nothing else, the benefit that me and him have talked about from that is that I realize what I do when I do that, so that I try when I'm recording, when I'm on someone else's show. Okay, a lot of times, I would stop and pause, or I would leave like dead air, and it's realizing that mistake on your own. So eventually the editing becomes easier because you start to fix your own previous mistakes, which helps a lot.
Exactly. And I feel that the pauses that I might have in my current day recordings, or my uhs and ums, they all sound way more natural 10 plus years into this than they did when I first started, where maybe they needed to be edited out. Now it's, when I listen back to it, and maybe I'm not listening with 100% detail, but anything that me or my guests say when we have a pause, I'll edit out an extremely long pause, but most pauses are natural. Most uhs and ums are actually like, it's unnatural to have a 1 hour conversation and have no one say, yeah. Like it's, so I don't mind leaving that stuff in because it never sounds bad to me. And I don't know, most people will probably say it's because I'm lazy, but I think it sounds way more natural. And that's what, at least Everything Is Awesome, it's supposed to be a natural conversation. What are your thoughts on the big announcement from Vinnie Mac yesterday about the XFL?
Oh, I am unbelievably excited about this. Way more than any person probably should be.
Well, and
I loved the XFL when it came out. I loved the 30 for 30 they did on it on ESPN. I think was amazing and reminded me how much I loved it. But now seeing this and seeing his announcement, I mean, there were some hiccups in the fact that he says nobody wants to watch a 3 to 3.5 hour football game when his episodes of Raw are over 3 hours long. Which I thought was a little hypocritical of him. But yeah. I mean, I'm excited for it. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what it's going to be involved in. I don't know how crazy it's going to be, but the XFL was great. And a lot of what the NFL does now, like the field cameras and stuff like that, and the microphones on the coaches and players, they stole from the XFL in the first place. So I think it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking about the XFL yesterday as far as like what it was back then, and like, well, obviously it kind of failed, because like the talent wasn't there. But I was like, but if you really think about it, like I like watching arena football. Like maybe it's because the Philadelphia Soul are good, but
right.
It's not like, so it's not just that. And looking at the clips, and I didn't watch the 30 for 30 on the XFL, but like,
oh, you definitely have to.
Yeah, I do want to, especially now that it's coming back. But seeing the clips of the old XFL, it's like, well, I know why this failed. It was too much WWE influenced. And I think that if he truly does keep the two things separate and he doesn't make it a mockery, like I feel like the XFL was kind of a mockery, like where like I feel like there was lingerie dressed cheerleaders and what
there were. Uh-huh.
So like
keep going with things that are not problems, Kevin. Go ahead.
But I feel like if it's basically, I guess, just like kind of a copy of the NFL, like I'd be happy. There's like obviously like I'm all for the idea of eliminating some things that slow the game down, but I don't know if I'm real wary of the XFL this time around.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting. I don't know exactly what he can do. Like, I don't know how he's going to make it necessarily more exciting or, explosive like it was before. Because when he did it before, that was in, like, Attitude Era WWE. Yeah. They could go farther. You can't go that far on general television anymore unless he just decides to go all for, it's only going to be on WWE Network, and that's how you're getting it, which I don't see him doing, but because you're not going to get as many viewers, but who knows?
And I actually don't see him going WWE Network only. I mean, maybe it would be, and because as long as he keeps the two products separate, that's a big plus. Because as much I think one of the biggest flaks that the XFL got when it first started was, well, this is just going to be predetermined winners like it is in wrestling. It's going to be fake.
Right, exactly. And if he can avoid having, like you said, avoid the two brands sort of coming together so nobody thinks that it's the same thing, that's I guess one of the few ways you're going to be able to take legitimately. That, and depending on how serious ESPN as a whole takes it. If ESPN takes it seriously, that's going to be the ticket right there.
thank you once again to Craig for coming on the show. I know that I had to piece it together, and once we kind of started hitting our XFL talk is when we had our connection issues. So I'm not 100% sure because I haven't edited it yet. I'm doing this ahead of time. I'm not 100% sure where what it sounded like and what the final product is. But we will have Craig on again. I really enjoyed talking to him. Him and I have a lot of similar interests and whatnot. We're pretty, just like me and BK Mullen are like the same person, just, a decade apart. Craig and I are like almost the same person, I think around the same age. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I really enjoy talking to these people, and we have similar interests and whatnot, and it makes me want to do more with them, and I'm really excited to maybe do something that's a little bit more in studio, or at least remote studio quality versus on the personal hotspot. Make sure you check Take Two out on all their social media. Make sure you check them out on iTunes. Leave a 5-star rating review. While you're on iTunes, make sure you leave Everything Is Awesome a 5-star rating review. Apple Math, I explained it in the beginning of the show. While you're on Twitter following Take Two, make sure you're following Everything Is Awesome at Real Awesome Pod. We do most of our announcements on Facebook, though. Facebook.com/Real Awesome Pod. That's where we announce live shows like our Everything Is Awesome Let's Have Cancer Podiversary Festival that we're doing. You can get those announcements there and read more about it there. If you want to, though, stick to Twitter and chat with me on a regular basis, I'm more than happy to, at ThatNerdyKev on Twitter. And, just keep on helping support this show. Patreon.com/thatentertains, iTunes reviews, and word of mouth recommendations. That would be wonderful. Thank you all so much for listening to this show. And I know it's an hour or so out of your day, so I appreciate the time that you spend with us. And we'll see you next time right here on awesomepodcast.com. We are part of the Core Temp Arts Podcast Network. We've been awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Core Temp Arts Podcast Network. To listen to more Core Temp Arts shows, visit coretemparts.com.